I'm getting impatient. That's what I'm doing. I can't see that well still. But we feel good about the doctor's prognosis about my vision getting back to normal. I mean, my normal. So a lot of people don't realize that my normal is quite different than what a lot of people probably thought. I've never been able to have good vision out of one eye. People are like, well, he definitely lost one eye, but at least he has the other one. That's actually never really been true. I've always had a really badly damaged one eye, and that scar tissue eventually built up under my retina and detached it about a month ago. So still a little sore. My eyes still pretty irritated, and there's some inflammation still happening. So I'm still really tired as we recover from it. But I've been getting back to official duties for a while now. Stayed out of the political fray. Let's call that extra duties. But able to do my normal stuff. My wife's been great, just kind of helping me get around the house and helping me get to places, get to meetings. So I'm exercising just fine again. Just waiting for this big gas bubble stuck in my eye to dissipate, so then we can get a new prescription and get back to normal.
Take us back a few months before the retinal surgery. What symptoms did you start to experience?
Well, yeah, and these are in hindsight. I maybe should have seen it coming, so to speak. Uh, Back in January, I did see some kind of flashes off to this corner of my vision, and imagine looking at a screen too long, and maybe some distortions associated with that, and that kind of blinking. That's sort of what I saw, but then it went away, and I didn't think much of it. And then it came back in real full force about a month ago, and I still didn't think much of it. And I did set up an eye appointment just in case. But I honestly, and maybe this is self-deception, but I honestly didn't think it would be a big deal. I did not imagine my retina detaching, even though that had certainly been on our minds for the last decade since this happened in 2012. It's always been a problem, or at least a possibility. But didn't think it would actually happen, and I didn't think I'd actually be reliving a lot of those moments from 2012. So I did do a similar surgery to this back in 2012 with a bubble in the eye, which is basically like a band-aid for your retina. That's why they do it. However, the the pathology of this particular injury now was actually worse than before. My retina didn't detach before; it had a hole in it, which is also bad. But this time it was peeling off, and so was lucky to be in Houston when it happened, because wherever it happened, I have to stay there for at least 6 weeks. So lucky to be in Houston, and we have a great medical system here, and hopefully we're on the right track to get it fixed up.
You mentioned your history. Most people probably don't realize that you've had surgery on this particular eye before, but in the podcast you released this month, you walked people through that. Why was it important to you to share that perspective?
Well, because people are going to ask anyway, So one of the nice things about having a powerful reach on social media and a podcast is I can correct misinformation somewhat quickly. And this has been a question a lot of people have. You wouldn't believe the kind of questions I get. And I relayed some of those in the podcast. Why are you wearing glasses? What, are you getting old? I'm like, no, I had a bomb go off in my face. Like, how do you not know that? It's one of the reasons I wear an eye patch is to indicate that there's really something going on here. I'm a young guy. Obviously, I don't need reading glasses, or I shouldn't need reading glasses. So I think we did that just to lay it all out there, and explain in detail for people what's really going on and what always has been going on. It's just an opportunity to do so. It's not a subject I really care to talk about normally. I don't try to avoid it. It doesn't have any, I don't have any emotional issues with it or anything. I really don't. I just don't find it that interesting. But if there was a time to talk about it, I suppose it would be now.
And what was it like for you to hear your wife relive some of those moments? I was struck that you did that together. You shared those memories together as a couple.
Yeah, it was good to kind of have that conversation together, because I mean her perspective is simply different than mine. She probably has a better memory of that era as well, and she sees it differently. So that's why I wanted those two kind of competing perspectives. And you can see throughout that conversation how we really did live that experience a little bit differently from each other. And, maybe the truth is somewhere in between. Um, so yeah, it's a good podcast to listen to, I think.
You talked about laying face down after years ago after the initial round of surgeries for 6 weeks. Did I remember that correct?
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, is that truly on your stomach, bed rest for 6 weeks?
Well, it's not bed rest. You just need to be looking down. Because the idea is that the bubble needs to be pressed against the back of your retina, like a band-aid. And you can accomplish that any number of ways. You can be standing up, you can be hunched over, you can be in a massage chair, which is what my normal state was. This
So
is
you
what I
just
had
have to be
here. This past,
looking down.
yeah, it has to be looking down. Because you got to let gravity do its thing, and you got to let that bubble rise to the top of your eye, and the top of your eye needs to be the back of your retina. If that makes sense. So it's what is it like? It's boring, and it's annoying. But it is funny to me. That is always the part of that story that everybody latches on to. They're like, "Wow, 6 weeks facing down." And I'm like, it was bad, but I mean, there was a lot more to that story that was way, way worse. I mean, that was just a funny annoyance compared to everything else we were dealing with. And look, it's not like you can't pick your head up every once in a while. Okay, I mean, when you fall asleep, you naturally roll over. You're not supposed to, but and you try not to, but it's your eye's not going to fall apart if that happens. And luckily this time, I guess because of advances in technology, I only had to be face down for 7 days as opposed to 6 weeks. Still very annoying, but it is what it is. You do what you have to do to heal.
hmm Do you remember the moment your vision came back? I think in the podcast you talked about seeing the colors and that American flag.
Yeah, I mean, I vaguely remember it. It was probably a couple weeks after getting back. It's all very blurry. Um, because I show back up in Bethesda, my right eye is gone, my left eye is still really patched up. Within probably 24 hours of being in Bethesda, we go do that surgery, which was effectively a cataract surgery, trying to remove the broken lens in the eye and remove any other fragmentation. Remain patched up for a number of days, I suppose, and then slowly start to undo that and at least see light and at least see some shapes, which ends up being sort of what I see now. If there was no bubble in my eye, if I was in my normal state, again, people don't realize I only see basic shapes and colors in front of me. I'm probably like a 21,000 kind of prescription. I'm a plus 11 prescription. Most people are like a -3, 5, something like that. And they're like, see, wow, I'm really blind too, Dan. I'm like, you don't know what blind is, And so I mean, that's my normal state, but it is correctable. That's always the question: is it correctable with glasses and contact lenses? And for me, it has been, and I'm hoping it's the same here in a few weeks when we have to redo the prescription.
And in the past 10 years or so, between the initial round of surgeries and now, you've really had no major surgeries, right?
Right, right.
What was the recovery like this time compared to last time?
Well, look, in some ways, this was better. In some ways, it was worse. It was better in the sense that I didn't have an entire body that was hit with shrapnel this time. So, last time there was the eye issues, but there was also just a ton of pain from the explosion that lasted for weeks. Um, this time, though, I was really confronted with permanent blindness this time because a retinal detachment is very, very dangerous. And if it had come off completely, if I hadn't been able to get back to, if I'd been traveling and hadn't been able to get back to Houston, you have a very limited amount of time between you see those symptoms, you realize it's detaching, to you need surgery immediately, and we can maybe recover your vision. So this was a bit more problematic in many ways. Um, but within a week later, the doctor was pretty relieved and happy with what he was seeing. So we feel pretty good about it now. And I wouldn't say this recovery is all that bad. I've torn my tendon out of my bone before. Frankly, that's a worse recovery. It's more painful. So, everything, you got to put everything in perspective, because the question is it hard? Yeah. Is it hard compared to what? That's always the question. I don't know if people ask that question. And look, I've been through a lot worse than this. So these days, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I've been able to detach from politics for a little bit. Got to look at the silver lining.
And no flying and no driving above, is it 15,000 feet? The elevation matters.
Oh yeah, like 1,500, about 1,000, more like
1,500, sorry.
1,000. Yeah, you really start to feel it at 1,000. So no, about the most I can go is Austin. It's about as far as we can go for a 6-week period, and that's frustrating. We've canceled quite a bit. I haven't been able to get to DC, but we have been proxy voting in DC. And I've been engaging in all the committee hearings. I guess that's the one, because it's still COVID times, at least, or at least Washington D.C. certainly believes that, where everything's still remote, and so I've been able to participate fully.
And what can you see now?
Oh, it's complicated. It's as if like the bottom half of my vision is still filled with bubbles. It just looks like bubbles. It's really difficult to see past. If I try to look down here, I can't really see what I'm doing with my hands. Above that, it's becoming more clear slowly, but you have to understand what clear is. Clear for me. Clear for me is not clear for you. It's a different. I'm defining it differently. It's clear according to my prescription, which is like a 21,000 prescription. So I wear these glasses, which I can't find now because I've now lost them. I can't see them. But it'll sort of help me see what's right in front of me. But these are like a +11 magnification. So, you wear a dive mask, put some bubble bath in it, and rub the lenses with Vaseline. That's sort of what I see.
And how long till you return to your normal?
Yeah, my normal, I'm hoping a few weeks. I have to get another prescription because the shape of my eye is now different. So, got to get a new prescription. But I'm hoping a few weeks. I mean, the bubble's getting smaller. I'm
What
ready for this.
symptoms should people look for? I know not everybody has your background and your story, but just in terms of detached retinas, what symptoms would you tell people? Hey, watch out for this.
This happens to healthy people when you get hit in the head really hard. That's when and you'll notice it right away. You'll have blurry vision. Go see a doctor. That's what a detached retina looks like. It's all of a sudden you just can't see. It's not like it goes dark, but it's like you've been staring at the sun too long, and it just you can't kick it. You can't get rid of it. But it's usually because of a head trauma that knocked it out of place. It's rare that it just falls off. I mean, it happened to me that way because of past trauma. So, what most, especially elderly patients, have to look out for is macular degeneration. Unfortunately, there's not really a way to reverse that. But that happens more in elderly patients. And that's about as far as my expertise goes as an eye, as a pseudo eye doctor.
I think our final question, Congressman, you mentioned in the podcast not wanting people to feel sorry for you, that you signed up to serve, that you wouldn't trade your experience for the world. Why is that perspective important to you?
Perspective is important in general, and I sort of hinted at this before. Again, is something hard? Yes. Well, is it hard compared to what? And compared to who? What they had to deal with? That should stiffen your spine sometimes. Everybody likes to think that their problem is the hardest problem that's ever been experienced. Well, of course, that's not true. It's not true. And it's good to remind ourselves of that. Even if you just have to imagine, you don't have to think of an actual example. Just imagine it, because it is true. But then the next step, I think, in fortitude, and what I talk about in my book, is the stories that we tell ourselves. Look, this story of self-pity, or this story of asking for pity, it is just that. It is a narrative. It's a narrative that you build in your head, and it's a narrative that can't possibly get you anywhere. It might feel good, right? It feels good for some people. People to feel sorry for them, feel that compassion for them. It does feel good, but it doesn't get you anywhere. The only story that gets you somewhere is a story of overcoming, is a story of overcoming adversity, is a story of resilience. You tell yourself that. And that's not just just my mantra. That's not just my philosophy. There's science backing this up. Cognitive behavioral therapy and psychology basically does this. It's about telling yourself a proper story, and a proper story that has a positive outcome. There's a lot people in our society today who do the opposite of that. And it's not healthy. And I think it's happening more. That's why I wrote this whole book about it. I think it's happening more now than it ever has in the past. And we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion and think more about fortitude and less about fragility.